Hi, Great Hager here, and welcome to another episode in my series taking a look at the unique mechanics of each of the races in Warhammer 2. In today's video, we will take a look at the Lizardmen, one of my favourite races in the game. With their solid front line of Saurus and their more exotic creatures, I find them a very enjoyable race on the battlefield. So while the Lizardmen are fun to play in battles, how are their unique mechanics? Well, I'm sad to say, they are somewhat lacking, with only 2 of the 6 lords having a system of their own, and the race-wide Geomantic Web, while having a lot of power at higher levels, being quite lackluster. So let's take a closer look at the shared mechanics of the Lizardmen. We start with the Blessed Spawnings, which are the equivalent of Regiments of Renown, but are earned after completing missions rather than by your faction leader reaching pre-specified levels. Unlike Regiments of Renown, the player can recruit multiple copies of a Blessed unit if they are available, as missions can grant multiple Blessed Spawnings when complete. Blessed Spawnings can be recruited immediately for no cost, however they do have an increased upkeep over the standard unit, and when they die, they are permanently gone. It's a very basic mechanic, and I only really mention it here as the Lizardmen have so little to discuss. Second is the Geomantic Web, which is a network that connects each of your settlements on the campaign map. The web has several tiers of power, which are based on the level of the geomantic buildings in the connected settlements. There are 4 categories of bonuses, spread across 5 levels of power, and at the higher levels it is well worth investing in. I do believe that while the bonuses can get quite good, it is probably the weakest race mechanic for the Game 2 races. In order to make this a little better, it would be nice if higher levels provided some form of attrition for enemy armies travelling through your lands, and some additional army abilities while in a region with a high Geomantic Web coverage. As I mentioned previously, the Lizardmen got short-changed for their race mechanics, and the Geomantic Web is a good example of this. Third is the Rites mechanic that all of the Warhammer 2 races currently enjoy. There are 4 rites available to the player, each costing a different amount of gold to trigger. The 4 rites presented do change based on the legendary lord, with a few core rites and 1 or 2 unique ones. I have mentioned previously that it would be nice to have all races in the game have this available to them, and hope that CA decide to do so as races are upgraded in Game 3. So, there we have the existing mechanics, somewhat lacking. So the question is, what new mechanic can we give the Lizardmen? Well, some of you may be familiar with my Medallion of Chaqua mod, which can be used by all of the Lizardmen factions. It provides the player with the option of applying bonuses to different units as the player controls more and more settlements. At certain numbers of settlements, the player is informed that a new piece of the medallion has been discovered, and they can choose a bonus from the 6 available for that tier. There are 5 tiers in total, and the player can choose to focus on constantly improving one type of unit, or can spread the bonuses across multiple units for a more balanced approach. It was my first scripted mod, and is quite simple and was intended as a testing ground for my unique mechanics approach. It works fairly well, but it needs an overhaul. To improve this mechanic, I intend to link it to a diplomacy and trade system, where other Lizardmen factions are more likely to trade with you and have positive relations, the more levels of the medallion you have. As you increase relations with the other factions, you will gain campaign bonuses, but you only keep these bonuses as long as that faction is alive. So if you want to keep the powerful bonuses, you will need to protect your fellow Lizardmen and not give in to the temptation to conquer them yourself. Now, let's move on to the Lizardmen's legendary lords. We start with Gor-Rok. He has the Great White Lizard effect, which increases recruitment rank of Saurus by 3, reduces upkeep cost of Saurus by 20%, and makes Lord Kroq available from the start of the campaign. Unfortunately, he does not currently have any unique mechanic, so what might we give him based on his lore? It is mentioned that Gor-Rok can always be found where the fighting is thickest, and those that do not fall beneath the powerful sweeps of his mighty weapon are smashed aside by his massive shield. Based on this, we will implement a mechanic called Heart of Battle, where each kill that Gor-Rok gets in battle fills a meter which has 3 trigger points. When the first trigger is reached, all units within 150 meters of Gor-Rok receive a leadership boost for 30 seconds, and Gor-Rok himself receives a small boost to his physical resistance for the same period. When the second trigger is reached, all units within 150 meters gain additional melee attack and melee defense for 30 seconds, while Gor-Rok once again receives a boost to his physical resistance for the same period. When the third trigger is reached, all units within 150 meters of Gor-Rok gain regeneration for 30 seconds, and Gor-Rok himself gains additional physical resistance, melee attack, and regeneration for the same period. This should fit his lore nicely, and encourage the player to keep Gor-Rok in the thick of it, holding the centre of the line and buffing the ever-living crap out of his army around him. In regards to the Medallion of Chaqua mod, Gor-Rok currently starts with melee attack and recruitment cost bonuses for Saurus warriors. For the additional diplomacy system, we will give Gor-Rok armies additional replenishment for each protectorate the player has. Up next is Kroq-Gar. He has the Last Defender of Shotl effect, which reduces upkeep for all units by 10%. Much like Gor-Rok, he has no unique mechanics. Once again, let's take a look at the lore in the army book. Kroq-Gar has fought many wars and has split a great deal of blood for Lord Mazdamundi and the Great Plan, so we will create a mechanism based on this. The Altar of Blood mechanic sees Kroq-Gar gaining blood from battles and raiding, which is used to fill a progress bar that applies bonuses to Kroq-Gar, lords and heroes. Every few levels will unlock a new army ability. Each of the army abilities, when triggered, lasts until the end of the battle, and their effects increase until they reach their caps. The caps vary for each ability, but all can be increased with technologies or character skills. The first ability is the Tenet of Strength, which increases weapon damage for all units on the battlefield by an additional percentage point each 30 seconds, until the cap is reached. The cap is initially set at 20% above the base damage, and this ability is unlocked at Tier 2. The second ability, the Tenet of Wisdom, increases the melee defense for all units on the battlefield by an additional point each minute, until the cap is reached. The cap is initially set at 25% above base value, and this ability is unlocked at Tier 4. At Tier 6, we unlock the third ability, the Tenet of Discipline, which increases the morale for all units by an additional point each minute, until the cap is reached. The cap is initially set at 25%. The fourth ability, the Tenet of Endurance, triggers a short period of regeneration for the entire army. This ability is unlocked at Tier 8. The fifth and final ability is the Tenet of Faith, that increases the physical resistance of all units on the battlefield by 1 percentage point each 30 seconds until the cap is reached. The cap is initially set at 20%, and this ability is unlocked at Tier 10. For the Medallion of Chaqua mod, Kroq-Gar starts with increased movement speed and reduced recruitment cost for cold ones, and for the new Protectorate system, he will gain additional campaign movement for each faction under his protection. Our third lord is Mazdamundi, who has the Lord of the Solar City effect, that reduces the construction cost of Star Chamber buildings by 50%, reduces right costs by 30%, and increases Slan Mage Priest capacity by 1. As Mazdamundi was one of the core legendary lords in Warhammer 2, it is not surprising to learn that he does not have a unique mechanic, as he did not really start getting added until later in Game 2 DLCs. For Lord Mazdamundi, I would give him a new mechanic called Divine the Great Plan, where a series of missions would lead the player throughout the lands to capture settlements, defeat armies, and locate artifacts that will help Lord Mazdamundi divine the Great Plan. When Lord Mazdamundi has learned enough from the missions completed, then another tier of the journey is unlocked and new missions are provided to the player. The player also receives bonuses to Lord Mazdamundi and other Slan Mages, along with bonuses to units. There are 12 tiers to the plan, with each tier having several related tasks or missions to complete. As for the Medallion of Chaqua, Lord Mazdamundi starts with increased charge bonus and reduced recruitment cost for Bastiladons, and we will extend this to include increased Slan Mage recruitment rank for each Protectorate that he has. Our fourth legendary lord, and the first to have a unique mechanic, is Nakai. He was added in the Hunter and the Beast DLC, and has the Wanderer effect, which increases the recruitment rank of Kroq-Gar agents. His first mechanic is Jungle Nexus, which has a shared recruitment system where all hordes use the primary horde as a focal point from which to recruit their units. This makes playing as a horde more enjoyable, and is a good step in the right direction to fixing horde gameplay. The second mechanic is Temples of the Old Ones. When Nakai captures a settlement, he does not maintain control of it, but instead it is handed off to a vassal faction. The player gets to choose one of 3 blessings when the settlement is captured, with each blessing having several layers and bonuses which can be unlocked. This is a great system, providing the player with plenty of options, and it comes with quite a lot of power. An additional mechanic that is only available in the Vortex campaign tasks the player with completing missions that hunt down Empire characters, for a reward of Old One's favour. This is very thematic, as Nakai has a rivalry with the Hunts Marshal, and this helps to drive that rivalry home during the campaign. For the Medallion of Chaqua, he gains a bonus to movement speed and decreased recruitment cost for Kroq-Gars at the start of the campaign, and for each protectorate he will gain an additional horde growth and increased recruitment rank for Kroq-Gar lords. The 5th legendary lord is Tehenhauin, who was added in the Prophet and the Warlock DLC. He has the Prophet of Sotek effect, which increases upkeep cost of Saurus by 200% until stage 1 of the Prophecy of Sotek is complete, and reduces the cost of rites by 75%. The first mechanic Tehenhauin has is the Sacrifices to Sotek, where you can sacrifice slaves earned through battles to earn rewards. There are 3 tiers to the Prophecy of Sotek to unlock. In the first stage, the Rise of the Red Crests, the player suffers from a 200% increase to the upkeep of Saurus Warriors and Temple Guard. To remove this penalty, the player needs to own 2 entire provinces and perform 5 ritual sacrifices. The second stage, the Skaven War, sees all Skaven clans at war with the Lizardmen, and increases the player's diplomatic relations with other Lizardmen factions by 30. To move to the next tier, requires the player to own an additional 3 entire provinces, win 3 battles against Skaven, and perform 5 ritual sacrifices. Once the player has reached the 3rd stage, Sotek Manifests, they gain increased physical resistance, a 20% increase to research rate, and an additional 10 leadership when fighting Skaven. This is my favourite Lizardman mechanic, and makes Tehenhauin's campaign much more interesting. If only the other Lizardmen had mechanics as nice as this one. In regards to the Medallion of Chaqua, Tehenhauin starts the campaign with bonuses to armour and movement speed for skinks, and the new Protectorate system would see him gain increased recruitment rank for skink lords and heroes for each faction he protects. Our final legendary lord is Tiktaq'to, who has the Master of Skies effect, that gives skink heroes a pterodon mount from the start, increased line of sight for all characters, and gives pterodons a unique army ability. Tiktaq'to has no unique mechanics, so once again let's add a system just for him. I was not really able to find much in his lore to work from, so I've chosen a mechanic where he will need to find and collect pieces of a stone tablet that have been lost throughout the old world. There are 12 pieces to collect, which can be found in settlements or on rogue armies. As Tiktaq'to collects each one, the player is able to perform an upgrade on one of 4 groups of bonuses. There are 16 available bonuses, so the player is unable to unlock them all, and must choose what would best suit their situation and playstyle. The first group upgrades Saurus Lords, Heroes, Saurus Warriors and Temple Guards. The second group provides upgrades to Skink Chiefs, Mages and all Skink units. The third group allows upgrades to Kroq-Gar Lords, Heroes and units, while the fourth and final group provides upgrades to Slan Mages and a variety of beasts. Once the player has collected all of the pieces, then they unlock additional set of campaign bonuses. For the Medallion of Chaqua, Tiktaq'to starts with bonuses to armour and reduced recruitment cost for pterodons. In the Protectorate system, he would gain increased campaign line of sight and ambush chance for all armies. So, there we have the existing race and lord mechanics with a few new ones thrown in to give each faction a little bit more flavour. I am currently working on implementing new mechanics for the dwarfs, with a new race mechanic and mechanics for each of the legendary lords. Once this is complete and has been released, I plan on revisiting the Lizardmen and upgrading the Medallion of Chaqua to include the new Diplomacy Protectorate system, and to hopefully implement some of the mechanics for the individual lords I have proposed. You can expect to see a reworked Medallion of Chaqua mod released sometime early next year. What do you think of the changes I have discussed? Do you have a mechanic that would better fit the race or one of the lords that you would like to see implemented? Well, that brings us to the end of the video. If you have been enjoying my content, please leave a like or subscribe, and if you'd like to help the channel, then you can support me on Patreon. In our next mechanics video, we will take a look at Norska and what systems they currently have. I'd just like to end by saying thank you to everyone who has been watching recently. I have seen the channel grow quite quickly in the past week or so, and it has been very humbling. I have a fairly modest goal of reaching 200 subscribers by the end of the year, and to have seen the recent jump gives me confidence that I can reach that target and possibly exceed it. I'm Grey Tiger, and I'll hopefully see you next time.